we're going to get into really some things that I've learned. 5, in fact, things I've learned after doing about 2,500 or more sales calls online. So a lot of calls, a lot of conversations, met a lot of great people, amazing coaches and trainers. So I'm going to be diving into those 5 things in just 1 second. And it's not going to be sexy. I just want to set you up with the right expectations from the get-go, because it's often the simple things when done consistently that lead to the biggest changes. So let's dive into really the 5 things. I'm going to start with number 1, and that's really having some kind of framework to follow. Okay, so having some kind of framework to follow when it comes to your sales process. So this is something that I'm big on for myself, and for when I'm teaching people sales and how to make more sales, because think of it like nutrition, or think of it like training. If you give your clients some nutritional framework and plan to follow, then they're going to be much more likely to see results, right? Because they're following something that's been proven to work. Same with the training plan, right? You can have a client who goes to the gym with no training plan and can get results. But if you give your clients a training plan, which is typically what they come to you for, then they're going to get better results because it's really strategic in the things that they're doing day in, day out, week in, week out when it comes to their training sessions. And the same is true when it comes to calls. This is what I've identified. I've tried winging it and just being myself, so to speak, and just making it up as I go along. But what I found from doing thousands of calls is I always perform better when I have a framework, when I have a script, when I have something that I can lean on to actually make sure that I stay on track. And after doing about 2,500 plus calls, I could probably freestyle it. I probably don't need a script at this stage. But there's another reason why I use a script and a framework, and that's because it allows me to listen better. Because if you've got a script, if you've got a framework, you can lean on that, and you don't have to think about what to do or what to say next if you've got a framework and if you've got a script. And so for me, fundamentally, I'll never operate and never run a sales call. And I run sales calls to this day for my program because I love speaking to people. I'll never do it without a framework or a script. I'll never do it. I'll never just freestyle it, because it just doesn't make sense and it will be negligible. It would be like a surgeon trying to operate on someone's brain without using a surgical knife and just using their fingers. They're not going to do a very great job. That's how I see a framework, and that's how I see a script when it comes to the sales process. So that's the first thing, is having a framework in place. The second thing is always being curious. Okay, so always being curious and just wanting to find out more. Okay, and I think of myself going into a sales call as essentially a diagnostic practitioner. Okay, I'm looking to diagnose the problem so that I can prescribe the right solution. And that means being very, very curious. When someone says something, I don't necessarily take that at face value. Or if I want to go a little bit deeper, I'm going to unpack things and I'm going to go deeper. And that comes with discovering what people's problems are, what people's desires are. But equally, when you get to the end of the call and people are like, well, I need to think about it, it's also being curious then. It's being curious enough to ask questions that are going to get you to the thing that they're trying to describe, or that they're going through, or they're feeling, or what's holding them back from making a decision. If you're always curious going into calls, and if you're always curious when you're on your calls, you're going to identify so much more that's going to help you with helping people make that change and make that decision to move forward, because you're going to understand them better. And also you're going to be able to navigate maybe some of those obstacles that they're faced when it comes to making the decision. That only comes from curiosity. Okay. It comes from being curious and asking the right questions, and not stopping too soon, not stopping before you've got the full picture. And don't be afraid to say that you don't know what they mean, or for them to explain it again, or for them to help you connect the dots. I do this all the time, because often when you get on a sales call, someone says one thing, but then they say something that's conflicting. Has anyone noticed that? That someone will say one thing and then they'll say something else later on in the call and it doesn't match up. And when I hear that, I actually ask, because I'm curious. I say, hey, you mentioned this earlier on in the call, but now you're mentioning this, and I don't see how those things like connect. Like, help me connect the dots. Like what do you mean? What's going on there? And just being genuinely curious about what people are saying to you, because sometimes they don't know what they're trying to say, or they don't know um, how to explain what they're feeling or what they're going through, or what is the real reason why they may not be moving ahead with your program. Right. So that's the second one. Is this all making sense so far? If so, please do let me know. I've got three more for you. The next one is all about listening and taking notes. This is not sexy. I said it wasn't sexy when we started this call, but having success with things is often not sexy. It's about routine, it's about repetition, and it's about doing the simple, easy stuff that's easy to overlook. And right now, I'm just going to hold this up in front. This is my best friend. Okay. So I use a pad, an iPad. You could use a pen and paper, but something to scribble on. And the reason why I'm taking notes is because that's going to be very key to repeating back what I've heard, demonstrating what I'm hearing, and demonstrating that I'm listening, but also using the notes as a way to be able to speak about my program and my offer in a way that's going to resonate the most. Because the way that you can create an offer that resonates is you listen to what people say, you jot down notes, and then you make sure that when you're talking about your offer, you touch on the things that they've described that they're struggling with or that's important to them, because you can explain your program in many different ways. And I just used to have a generic offer and presentation in the early days, and it was just the same for every single person until I realized the real impact of listening, taking notes, figuring out like people's um, pains, problems, desires, and the words specifically that they're using, putting those on my pad, and then actually building that into the offer later on, because I'm basically talking about my program in a way that makes most sense to them. And that's what leads to higher levels of conversion. Right now, there's a 76% sign up rate as of this month to the Remote Coaches Academy. And it's from these things that I'm sharing with you today. And I've learned over 2,500 calls. Not sexy, not fancy. It's the basic stuff, but it does make a difference over the long term, right? So the next one is about building relationships. So a lot of people teach this idea of sales that you've got to close. ABC, always be closing. And nothing against closing. I just, one, don't like the word. And two, I don't feel that you have to close someone on a call. Sure, it helps that if you've had a great call, you've built up this momentum, and someone's in a decision making process and they're ready to move ahead, that you seal the deal there and then on the call. Absolutely, definitely do that. And I do that. But if someone genuinely needs to do something and you've been curious enough to identify that they're genuinely needing to do something, like they genuinely need to check with their partner, or they need to check their finances, and it's not something they can check whilst they're on the call, and you've checked that yourself, then building a relationship on the call will lead you to converting people into your program, even if you're not closing on the call itself, because I don't think it's necessary. I would say 50% or more of my clients and sales over the years have come from people who have bought after the fact, after the call, because I've spent time being a real human being and building a relationship and building a connection on the call, um, and not being salesy, right? And just letting people do the things they need to do in order to make the decision, whilst not leaving any stone unturned that could be handled on the call. So it's finding that balance between not pushing people too hard to make a change or make a decision, and actually building a relationship with people in the, like you would in the real world, in a networking event or at the pub, or at the gym, right? Just like having a proper conversation and building a proper relationship will lead you to actually generating more clients, because it served me very well. And I would say I'm more of a relationship closer than a one call closer, because I don't believe in pushing people into sales. I believe that everyone's an adult. Everyone can make a decision. I'm going to give them the best opportunity to make the best decision. I'm going to coach people where necessary to make the right decision for them based on what they're telling me. But if people need to fundamentally check things, that is okay. And I would encourage you to let them do those things. I'm seeing it make sense from someone in the audience. Is this all clear to everyone so far? If so, hit that like button, give me a thumbs up, say yes in the comments, and appreciate you engaging. So the next thing that I want to touch on is really about detaching from the sale. This was the hardest thing to develop, but one of the biggest things that I learned that set me up for big success when it came to sales later down the line. Because at this stage, if we look at just online coaching and selling online coaching specifically for the previous business that I was involved with, where I was the sales director and head of sales, taking all the sales calls, and from all the sales that I've done for my own programs over the last 4 years, it's probably well over £2 million at this stage, which I've converted through a Zoom call on a call, right? And so during that time, one of the big things that I learned to develop was detachment. Okay, was detaching as much as possible from the outcome, and really just showing up to a calls with no expectation. And I guess this comes when you have more success and you've brought in more people, and you're not searching and scratching around for sales. So there's something to be said about maybe over time, because there has been an abundance of sales, then it's easier to detach. But if I would have learned to detach from the outcome sooner, I would have been happier, I would have been healthier, and I would have made more sales. Because if you get really attached to the outcome, it can be soul destroying when you get into a call and you have this massive expectation that I need to bring on this client, I need to make this sale, and this person's definitely going to sign up, because when they don't, wow, you're going to hit the floor pretty hard, because you have all this expectation built into the fact that someone's going to say yes. And sometimes you cannot control that. Sometimes there's factors beyond your control that mean that even if you did your best and it was a world class performance, some people are not going to resonate with your offer, are not going to be financially able to make the investment right now, or for some reason, they're just not ready to move ahead. And so if you can detach as much as possible from the outcome, it means you give yourself the opportunity to really recover quickly from a call where someone says no, or not right now, or I'll get back to you in the future, or after Christmas. Okay. You can recover much faster, and then you can just get back to the things that get you the calls and lead you to getting clients, versus being bummed out and then thinking about that call for the next 2 days and really being unsure, uncertain, and lacking confidence to get on another call because you got so attached to the outcome. Something that I suffered with myself, until over time I was like, I just need to detach here. I need to let go of any expectation of whether someone's going to say yes. And I just need to show up with a service first mentality, be curious, take notes, ask the right questions, do the best, be ethical, and really just don't take it too seriously, but also follow a framework and make sure I'm professional. And if you do these things that I've mentioned to you on this call, you're going to have more success with your calls and with your sales if you're not doing this stuff already. Again, I said right at the start, it's not going to be sexy. It's not going to be revolutionary. A lot of this stuff that you've probably heard before, but it's often not new information that you need. It's the same information repeated to you again, and you being ready to receive it and implement it and do it. And that's really what I believe is the key to success with anything. It's not always something new. It's about doing the simple, same things over and over again, but better, consistently over the long term. And that will compound over time.